Hi there, everyone.
Thank you, Jay. If I can just remind everyone in the public that this meeting is being recorded, and if anyone would like to sign up for public comment, please do so in the chat by 9 a.m. All yours, Priscilla.
Good. Thank you so much. Welcome all. It's so good to see you at this executive committee meeting. This is a committee that doesn't meet all that often, but has very important work to do. And today we're going to talk about that. But I want to begin by reading our affirmation statement. And that's the trustees of the Boston Public Library reaffirm our commitment to racial equity and to principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion more broadly. The library is formally committed to becoming an anti-racist organization in response to systemic racism, inequity, and injustice prevalent in our society. We acknowledge also that the Boston Public Library Central Library stands on lands that was once a water-based ecosystem, providing sustenance for the indigenous Massachusetts people, and is a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among nations. We are committed to land acknowledgement for all locations at which we operate. We reaffirm this commitment to set the context for our planning, deliberations, and public engagement so that they take place from the spirit of welcome and respect found in our motto, free to all. So welcome. And as we have a full agenda, and so I'm going to go and ask Pamela to call the roll.
Sure thing. Can you, the phone number is John. Can you promote him for me, Jay? Thank you. I'm just going to read your last names. Arana Ortiz.
Yes.
Bradley.
Here.
Cronin.
Here.
Douglas.
Here.
Forey.
Here.
Heiler.
Here.
Thank you, John. You have a quorum.
Thank you,
Jeff
sir.
Hawkins is not able to attend.
Thank you and welcome, John. We look forward to seeing you.
Eventually. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I want you to turn your attention to the meeting of our draft minutes from our November 30th, 2022 meeting. And everyone has received those minutes, correct?
Yes.
And in terms of the minutes, let me see. What I want to just bring your attention to part of these minutes to make certain that everyone really took a look at them, because there was a piece about strategic planning and the role of this group. But I think first I need to entertain a motion, right, to approve the minutes, and then we can revise. Is that the format, Pamela?
Yes.
Sure.
So motion, everyone has the
So
minutes.
moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Okay, so so we can open it for discussion now. Correct?
Mhm.
So in the meeting and the minutes on the we talked about members had a hearty discussion on the role of the board as a governing body and fiduciary purposes. And that one of the things that we discussed is the role of the board, and it states in one of the paragraphs, the board discussed some apprehension they had toward the strategic plan being board-driven and felt it should be developed by management and presented for trustees' input afterwards. I'm just bringing that to your attention because it sounds like a strong statement. I think that we talked about, and this is why I wanted to discuss this, is that we talked about that it should be a collaborative process. Anyone recall recollection about this conversation?
I do, because I know, I think that I think along with John, probably expressed the most concern about sort of making sure that the board was staying in our lane to some extent and being very respectful of management for a couple reasons. One is obviously because of my day work, I'm I'm sensitive to the fact that boards, for the most part, are responsible for governance, and management is responsible for managing the organization. And there really is a difference. And I do generally feel that as long as you have a CEO on board, you should support your CEO until you don't want him or her on board anymore. And I think that well, speaking for myself, I would have preferred, frankly, to see a strategic planning committee where maybe, David was a co-chair or something like that and was empowered more. So I think, you could change the sentence to say certain individuals on the committee expressed apprehension. I understand not wanting to suggest it was a consensus view, but it's certainly my view and also I just think practically there's little point in coming up with a strategic plan that management, who are our experts here, frankly, in terms of what the organization can manage, think it's not a realistic plan or not executable or something like that. So I think that I do recall that conversation vividly, which does represent, so maybe that's the way to, if you're concerned about the wording of it, maybe more focus on a few individuals expressed apprehension.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I know I'm not, I'm just a visitor here today, but I do remember the conversation. It's certainly a valid concern. I suspect, although David can confirm, that the reality is that David and his team are at the very center of things. David and Beth are on the committee. They've been an active part of all the discussions. I've been working hand in glove with Lisa on all the communications and protocols. So I can't imagine the staff being more involved and more empowered unless the board just simply weren't involved, which I don't think want to be the case. But David, you can feel free to add comments or perspectives if you have a different perspective.
Yeah, I think Christian, I think what Cheryl's recollection of that part of the conversation is exactly spot on, and I think in practice Christian is right as to how we're going about this. So I do think it's a slight change to that minute to illustrate that it was a discussion and not necessarily a full consensus. I think would be fine. I do think actually during strategic planning, we may have more conversations about at BPL, what should the board's role be along this spectrum of pure advisory, which it's not because it's more than that, but nor is it hands-on management either, so there's a spectrum here, and there's recent research I'd be happy to share at another point around how we have that conversation. Because I think it goes to the future of the organization that we want to engage in, and how we reflect the diversity of opinion that there does appear to be among board members, I think will speak to the richness about how we go forward. We're obviously not a private sector institution, nor are we a pure nonprofit organization. We are incorporated as our own 501c3, but we are a city department with 80% of our funding coming from the city department and from the mayor's budget. So there are factors that I think constrain complete free reign to decide what we want to be with 175 years of history. But I think it'll be an important piece of conversation to happen during strategic planning about the board role and the relationship with management and the executive. But yes, I think Christian is correct. In practice, we are doing this collaboratively, which is also reflected in the minutes. So apologies if that was more than you wanted on that topic from me, but that's where I am.
So Cheryl has suggested some language to edit this this is a draft of the minutes. And could somebody put that forward in a motion?
If I can just clarify it first for you, Priscilla, just to make sure I have it correctly.
Yes.
So I know the sentence, the sentence, it was below Mr. Westra explained. It was the following statement. It says the board discussed some apprehension. It will now reflect some members of the committee expressed apprehension. Is that correct?
I'm
Okay.
happy to make that motion.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any abstentions? Okay, so we will, the motion has passed and we will make the appropriate corrections in the minutes, moving them from draft status into a final status for the November meeting. Thank you. And we will today, we'll be talking more about the role of the board. That's one of the key issues, conversations that we're going to have. But right now, I want to welcome Beth Prendle. And first, Beth, I want to thank you and your staff for the great communications piece on Chronicle, which was excellent and gave people a look at the important role that the library plays. And if you haven't seen it, there's a great piece on Chronicle. I think it's Pamela sent it around.
Good morning, trustees. And yes, kudos to the whole special collections team. The Chronicle piece was fabulous, particularly to Jay Michella, our head of rare books and manuscripts, and Jessica Bitely, our preservation manager, and our whole conservation lab team. We've gotten some really wonderful feedback about it, and it's exciting to show off what's been happening. So I'm here today to talk with you about, this is actually a follow-up to a presentation that I made last May to the Board of Trustees regarding medical books owned by the BPL. You may remember from that conversation that in 1905, the trustees of the library entered into an agreement with the Boston Medical Library to deposit BPL's research collection of about 6,000 titles related to medicine with the Boston Medical Library. So that agreement was intended to centralize researcher and physician access to those materials, and the books were moved from the central library to the Boston Medical Library's facility. In 1960, the Boston Medical Library entered into a relationship with Harvard University to deposit all of their collections, including the BPL's deposit, with the BPL's full agreement at the Harvard Medical School's new Countway Library. It's located on Huntington Avenue here in Boston. The collections moved in 1965, where they've been ever since, and Harvard has overseen their care and administration, and they're publicly available and cataloged. Last year at your annual meeting, well, actually, let me back up. Last year, Boston Medical Library terminated its relationship with Harvard and removed its books from Countway. At the annual meeting last year, BPL Board of Trustees voted to dissolve the relationship between BPL and Boston Medical Library to prevent our deposit, those 6,000 titles, from being moved from Countway into storage with the rest of the BML collection. So they remained at Countway. And as I said at that meeting, we believe that the BPL deposit should remain where it is at Countway, as it has been for more than 50 years. From a patron perspective, nothing about access to the collection has changed or will change with this transition, and we believe this is the most beneficial decision institutionally, especially given our current severe collection storage deficit here at BPL. So Harvard has demonstrated that they are exceptional caretakers for this collection and have been over time, and they are committed to ongoing public accessibility, and they're very desirous that the collection stays with them. So with oversight and input from City Legal and our colleagues at Harvard, we have drafted a new Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, with Harvard and Countway, which stipulates that the books remain there free of charge. BPL maintains full ownership and title to these books, and they cannot be deaccessioned or discarded without explicit written permission from us. They must remain freely accessible to the public through a reading room within the City of Boston. And this relationship can be terminated at any time by either party with reasonable notice. So this is formalizing a relationship that we have had with Countway for decades. And we have drafted a memorandum of understanding for your vote. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Beth. What questions do you have?
This is wonderful, Beth. A question I have, first, I think it's great, to keep it there. It's been 57 years. So as we say, they have to provide a public space for people to physically come in. Are these BPL medical books scanned and are available online or not yet?
They are not yet.
Okay.
One of the conversations we are having, and actually I had with our new head of cataloging yesterday, is how we can provide even more access, both through our catalog and also consider what are opportunities we have to provide additional access, whether through Internet Archive or others. And so that is very much front of mind for us.
And it's and in your description, you stated that the books would be publicly available where there would be a space. Is that going to be at Countway or some other place?
That is at Countway. So Countway does have public access to the collections, and it is explicit in the MOU that remains for these books.
Thank you.
That's
Anything
cool.
else?
And Conway is located on Longwood Ave, right? If it's at the Harvard Medical School. So
Yeah,
it's
it's in Longwood, right? It's on Huntington Ave. Yep.
Yep.
So
great.
it's within the city of Boston.
Awesome.
Great. So I'd like to call for a vote. Was there
I was
something
gonna say, yeah, I was gonna say, Beth, do you know what the process is to access those books if you're from the public and not?
So they have a reading room, as we do here at Special Collections, and so the public would work with their librarians to use them within their reading room, just as they would here.
Okay.
So their structures is very much the same as ours.
Okay, got it. So you just show up with your BPL card and you should be able to access, because sometimes schools restrict the access. That's what I'm asking.
Exactly. No, and that we were very explicit that it was not limited to their students or faculty, that it was in fact publicly accessible.
Okay.
And that is their practice with these books and with their books.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So I'd like to call for a vote for the approval of the MOU between BPL and the Countway Library. Motion to
moved.
approve.
Second.
Ben?
Second.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Any abstentions? So it's voted that the trustees, the executive committee, approve this MOU. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Okay. Thank you. David, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, trustees. I'm happy to report on a development since the last full board meeting, which is the city's Office of Labor Relations has now signed the MOA with ASME Local 1526 and the library, signed the version as ratified. And so we're now able to bring both contracts to the board. While approval authority rests with the mayor's office and the city council, it is practice for the trustees to accept and endorse the successor collective bargaining agreement MOUs. And so here you have votes which may be voted on as a slate to endorse the terms of both successor agreements. And for additional detail, we've provided you the breakdown of current employee count as of May 3rd, with plus or minus 1 or 2 in each category. Our ASME colleagues are number in the 227, our PSA colleagues about 170. We have temporary employees who are shelvers and library aides primarily at about 40. And then the balance of our workforce at that date is made up of exempt managers and administrative staff at 32. So both of the cohorts that are represented by unions now have successor agreements pending confirmation by City Council. They've been a little busy recently, and we look forward to an affirmative vote from City Council on the ASME agreement, having already voted on the PSA one.
Thank you. Any questions? All right.
Good job.
Yeah, getting this over it takes a long time to get these over the finish line.
It's really a matter of dotting i's and crossing t's on this one. So there we are.
Pamela, what's the best way? Do we take these two votes? The two votes, should we take them separately or together?
Nope, you can do it as a slate, as
Okay,
presented.
okay. So I'd like to present these as a slate for the AFSCME and for the the AFL-CIO, these two items. And could I have a motion to approve, please?
So
Second?
second,
Yeah, okay, any further, there's no further discussion? And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Thank you. So we voted these two collective bargaining contracts. Thank you. Any other updates or anything else that we need to know, David?
With respect to the union negotiations.
Yes, we in our annual meeting, we talked about things would be getting underway, and hopefully by September we'll be entering into this process again.
That's right. We're actually moving more quickly, and so the PSA has already asked to begin negotiations on the next contract, and we are exchanging dates, which is a process being coordinated by the city's Office of Labor Relations. AFSCME has shared their intent to ask for the same consideration, and so we may be commencing bargaining with both unions actually over the summer ahead of September. And so the good news on this front means that, we will get to a settlement earlier and not be at the end of the contract period and having to do all this retro work. So the good news is the potential to, get any increases and so forth in people's pockets as soon as possible. The downside, of course, is, well, it just simply means more work in the short term, and but that's part of the job.
Thank you. So I want to move into a conversation, and this is really a discussion that I'd like to have. On the role of the executive committee. Many of us sit on other boards, and some of those boards are business and some of them are other not-for-profit. And we put together this executive committee, and as we know, it's a standing committee, a long-term standing committee of the BPL to bring more agility and flexibility, to be able to address issues that the trustees are not able to address in between meetings. And this executive committee is intended to maintain good governance, and it plays a vital advisory role, again, to facilitate the decision-making in between meetings in the event of, something that's urgent, some sort of crisis, and to take some necessary action. So we're a smaller group, and we have ties through the leadership. Many of you are chairs of committee. You have longstanding understanding, commitment to the library, and that's why you are members of this executive committee. We included, the ad hoc committee, and we've invited Navjeet to join us from time to time. And as you know, we have Christian here as the chair of our strategic planning committee. Now, the goal, we're really in transition, and that's why I'm presenting this as a discussion item, because as we move into the strategic planning process, there will be information or ideas that bubble up that we may need to call the executive committee to kind of bounce those ideas. So as we think about providing this organizational oversight, the key is it is not a management job. It is really taking a look at the issues, with the fact that you all have your perspective, you're connected to various communities, and it's really a barometer for this committee to say, well, this works, this doesn't work, here's some things. And that's the advisory role of the committee. In the future, a lot of the libraries and a lot of executive committees have a role of, assessing the committees. I know that the BPL fund, is going through an assessment process, really looking at the functioning. We're not there yet to be able to do that. Maybe that's something that's likely to come up but really taking a look at, okay, we have these committees. Are they functioning? Are they adding value? Do we continue them, or do we sunset these committees? But again, I'm putting this forward because some of these things we have not done in the past, and we may be moving into this new arena of action. Specifically, I want to make certain that everybody is truly connected to the strategic planning process. So let me just stop there.
Priscilla, just the schedule, can you just talk about, like, is it in the middle of the distance between two board meetings, or how have you scheduled them?
So right now, we will be getting into a conversation a little bit later. But the idea would be to have two scheduled executive committees, two of them, and then to have those, one in, I think we talked about maybe December, January, and then another one later in the fall. We will always have one around this time. But the idea for the executive committees, and again, Cheryl, I don't have a specific answer yet, but if there were something that was going to bubble up, the idea of the executive committee is that from time to time, we would say, hey, listen, we need your input. So that agility, yeah.
Right. But you have on this slide we're looking at, you have 5 dates listed. Are those the dates you're thinking about for the executive committee, or are those the dates for the full board meetings?
Those are the full board meetings and
Oh,
executive.
okay.
Pamela, do you want to walk, or David, do you want to walk us through, please?
Sure. So in practice, recent years have held 5 full board meetings, and our bylaws require us actually to only hold 2. So we're not bound. You as a body can decide what the right cadence and frequency is, with the increase of the number of board members and the desire to have higher levels of attendance and engagement, the conversation really is, should we stick with 5 full board meetings? Should we maybe reduce to 4 and substitute in an executive committee instead of one of the dates, or some combination of that? So as Priscilla, as the chair has said, we haven't made, there's no final decisions pending this conversation today and a follow-up. But right now, those are the options, and these dates are the dates that Pamela predicted based on recent practice seemed to work. With the idea that one or more could be swapped for executive committees. I do also want to express that in the past, some board meetings were held in person and always a couple in branches. And so, that's another factor to keep in mind. Plus, there's the current practice of a mixture of in-person versus either hybrid or fully Zoom meetings. So there are more variables to consider as we plan this going forward. I hope that's helpful just to clarify the different variables and data points.
So a question, just on these dates, these are the meetings for the full board, not the executive committee, correct?
At this time, yes, unless you or the chair decides to make a change.
The
Yeah.
vote that was taken last week at the May 23rd, just to clarify, was for this schedule, but it was pending whether they were for full board or if there would be a combination of full board and executive committee combined. That was something that was going to be determined with discussion of this group and under Priscilla's guidance in regards to how you wanted to move forward on that. But these were the dates that were recommended for next year's plan.
Priscilla, in the context of the committee's advisory role and being more agile, as you mentioned, maybe it's best to not schedule the executive committee meetings, but have it be a call of the chair when issues crop up.
Yes, that's a possibility. And the other thing is that we will have a predictable discussion that we need to have in the December, January timeframe for the executive committee. That's one that we might want to get scheduled. But yes, agility and flexibility is the key. Usually the executive committee meetings, as you know, they're quick meetings. They address really hot issues, topics, and resolve. So I think that, since you brought up the schedule, the idea is, and we're not going to go into a full discussion here, but please tell me offline, one possibility is to move from the 5 trustee meetings to 4. And David and Pamela assure me that we will still be getting all of our, the activities and responsibilities of the board done. But again, I'm saying this because of the strategic planning role and the fact that this committee would be more engaged, is likely to be more engaged in that. And I want to make certain that that we're sensitive to your time and not asking for you to be more available.
Priscilla, I'm just
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, sorry. I think it's just worth thinking about whether or not you should think about the full board meetings as doing them on a quarterly basis. And then maybe consider scheduling 2 executive committee meetings during the year that you have on the schedule, that you could decide, and you could decide to add to them, but as catch-up meetings. I do think that if you have a committee of the board, there should be at least 1 scheduled meeting per year, if not more. So I've also always wondered whether the 5 thing during the year just sort of makes a little less sense to me. So anyway, I defer to you and David to figure out the best approach, but I think it's worth considering full board meetings on a quarterly basis, during 1 meeting during each quarter, which kind of like there's some logic to that. And then, as I said, 2 executive committee meetings scheduled during the year. There'll always be business brought up, but then also you have the prerogative of scheduling additional executive committee meetings if you need them.
Thank you. Any other comments, practices?
I was just simply going to say, I think that this would be a great forum to discuss the work of the strategic committee. I think having this group as a sounding board would be very effective and probably more conducive to moving quickly and affecting the sort of decisions that we need to affect than having every update be made to the full board. I like Ben's suggestion of not committing to fixed dates for the executive committee necessarily, but I'm guessing that there are a few natural inflection points in the strategic planning process, like, for example, the selection of a consultant advisor, which will likely happen at some point in September or so. I suspect there'll be interim updates that would be helpful to provide, and we should be able to give this group a couple of weeks notice and be able to schedule meetings in a way that's effective.
The other thing that I was going to suggest is if they are, I always think about a rhythm, right? You want to establish a rhythm. So as every organization has a rhythm. So if we can think of what are those topics that we want this committee to address on a rhythm.
Yeah.
Like for example, we have the next topic coming up, which is, goals, right, for the upcoming year. And so that is a topic that will be a recurring topic for around this time of year, for example. So if we can think of, and actually, Christian, if you can think of, based on the strategic plan, and David, the collaboration you guys have, and when things are happening, because I don't have full visibility of the timeline, when would be appropriate to set up those meetings based on what you plan, I think would also be beneficial. So if we could just identify what topics and what that rhythm is, we could then say, oh, it's 2 times a year. Maybe we leave some ad hocs, maybe, something along those lines.
So thank you. This was really great input. I'll be working with David and Pamela to do this. We have the 2 suggestions. One is a quarterly piece. Another one is the topics piece with an establishing a rhythm. And again, keeping in mind that, as we have always done, if there's some sort of an emergency or crisis, we would call the executive committee. So thank you. We will communicate to you the final decision and what the schedule is. I'll be having some offline conversations, but I want to move now, please, to welcome Christian to give us an update, and to Christian and Lisa to give us an update on the strategic planning process.
Sure. Thank you, Priscilla. And I'd like to thank David and Lisa and all the members of the committee for their help in getting us this far. The committee's met a couple of times. We've had some really interesting and thoughtful conversations about what the strategic plan is meant to do, what it's meant to accomplish. We've been focusing mostly on getting together a request for proposal solicitation, and that is something that we have pulled together with extensive staff input, extensive input from other stakeholders. Lisa helpfully has outlined the calendar as we see it today. There are various requirements that are driven by city and library protocols, but where we are currently is we've got the solicitation form together. It's been submitted to the procurement office. The next milestone is that there'll be an official advertisement in the Globe, I believe, on the 7th for the consultant. Then the RFP will be posted to the city portal on the 12th, or submitted to the city portal on the 12th, and it posts officially on the 19th. We'll solicit questions from applicants, potential bidders. Those questions will be due in July, and then the library will respond to questions over the next week. And the current thinking is that we'd have the completed RFPs due on August 1st. Given summer schedules, I think we would probably look to push the interview process to September. But the hope would be to be in a position to select a consultant after that, shortly after that, and then really accelerate the process to the extent that we can. But Lisa, let me know if I've muddled anything on the timeline, or if you have any other context or qualifications to provide.
Nope, I think you've really got it, Christian. Of course, some of these dates may slide around if we, run into any issues, especially during the summer. But this is the schedule that was promulgated out of the procurement office, and so all of the timeline and the deadline follow their submission schedule.
Yeah, we've got a number of members of the committee who are particularly interested in being a part of the interview process. I think certain individuals have some great insights as to the kind of consultants we'd be interested in speaking here. So I think the idea would be to have a subset of the strategic planning committee members take part in the interviews. We welcome this committee's involvement as well. And then I think we would make sure to keep the executive committee informed and, in my view, involved in the decision as to who the consultant ultimately is. But David, Priscilla, I'd welcome your thoughts too on whether you have any other perspectives on how this selection process should take place.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I think it's more for Lisa. Actually, and you, Christian. I mean, normally when we, in addition to submitting to the city portal, we also reach out to organizations or individuals who we would like them to consider participating in the RFP. Are we doing that as well?
Kristen,
Yes.
if you'd like, I can take this one. Yeah.
Yeah, go
okay.
ahead, Lucian.
One of the things that we are planning to do in the next week, in the upcoming weeks, is to ask of members of the strategic planning committee and, also this group and others, if they have recommendations for folks who should receive this RFP. So to be clear, it's posted very publicly, it's advertised publicly, but there is nothing that precludes us from inviting people to respond to the RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and sorry, one other thing, if I may. You'll see at the top the equity form submission. That is a submission that goes both to the city and the state to ask them for potential vendors off of their equity list. So there's an automatic equity component involved in the distribution and dissemination of this.
Thank you.
I would just add that the committee and with Christian's leadership and Lisa's input developed an explicit set of criteria that are included in the RFP. And so every respondent needs to automatically meet and be scored on compliance with those criteria. So I think we anticipate doing a pass on that as a staff body. It's not decisional, but it will at least go through the initial analysis, and so that I think we want to be in a position where, as we move to any more public meetings around this, that we have really finalists that we're considering, rather than trying to put a large list of people through what might become a public process before selection.
The one thing I was going to say, Lisa, in our experience in finance and audit, a lot of minority-owned businesses do not register as equity firms, minority-owned businesses with the city. So it would be good that if you reach out to these and they're not in the list, encourage them to do so. And Ellen has done that in the past, so she could give you, I think she may be able to give you some information around that.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll be looking at supplier diversity lists from the city, and also, again, asking people about their networks. One thing that I have found in my prior work in housing is that sometimes minority-owned firms feel that they're not large enough to bid on city contracts. And one of the things that this RFP states explicitly is that we would allow subcontractors. So hopefully we'll see some really interesting coalitions come forward to respond as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of this, and again, as a member of the executive committee, the question is, we're a work in progress. You're going to discover what your role is and what your questions. As the chair, my goal is for you to be informed and to be knowledgeable. Why are we doing the strategic plan? What does it mean to be a 21st urban library? What are our mission, our vision? What's our communication? All those things are the things that are in the contract. So that's why you will be engaged. I know you bump into people, and this strategic planning process is intended to take the library into the future, and to be to provide some guidance for us in terms of our mission, vision, and all the engagement activities. So thank you, Christian, for taking this on. And thank you so much for getting us to this point. I suspect, in answer to Evelyn's question, that you'll be reaching out to these minority-owned businesses. It says before June 12th, before it posts, correct?
Yes, that's right. We're going to be reaching out to minority-owned businesses, other possible candidates that members of the committee have suggested could be great possibilities. So we'll make sure to coordinate. And I just say in closing, I think that being in the board meetings and hearing people like Roosevelt Weeks speak about the impact that strategic planning has had in their libraries is a real inspirational. I think there is an opportunity here to do something that could be very helpful and could be impactful. And we need everyone on this committee and everyone on the board generally to be involved. So thank you for letting us provide this update today.
And I thank you for bringing that up. I want to move us along given the time, but that was a question that John Heiler brought up at the last meeting, which is, are we going to have more presentations like that? Are we going, in the fall, are we going to have more guests? And so again, we're open. We look forward to hearing from you in terms of your recommendations. David has a deep network in terms of people to call on. Thank you. Thank you so much, Christian. We're going to move on now to new business. And one of the key new business pieces is the fact that we are going to be moving to on board as a way for the trustees and to get materials to us. And my question to you is, we have to get trained over the summer. Again, open question. If you have ideas in terms of best practices, how would you like to be, trained in this new technology? Do you want a personal call? Do you want some sort of a tutorial? What's the best way for you to get onto this new portal? Evelyn, are you speaking?
Are there any tutorial videos or anything like that?
Evelyn, I have a call with Onboard on Keith, myself, and a few of the IT people will be doing a welcome, like as we're the main holders of this, and they will roll out how would be the best way to train. So I will be able to answer that better for you, Priscilla, after my call in regards to how they will propose training. They asked when our first meeting was, and I told them that training would be needed over the summer. So they will give us best ways on how to go about doing that.
Can you describe exactly what Onboard is and what the reason for the adding this is?
It is typically a board has a way of having all the documents in one site, and the historical documents in one site, and you can log on to that particular site. So it'll be easier for us, for Pamela and staff, to upload PowerPoint presentations, all the materials that you need for the meeting. You can also use that particular portal as a way or a mechanism to commit to conduct committee meetings through that portal, so that you can just pull up the information. So the goal is it makes it almost like a one-stop shopping place for the trustees.
Okay, thank you.
When it works well. Okay.
I have a question. Is this like is there any configuration that needs to be done? Who decides the configuration? Is it is used as is?
So Keith and Derek, who's the applications manager, did a technical review of, I think, about 5 or 6 of the leading ones. This appears to be the easiest and simplest to use for our purposes. There are some configuration choices. There are additional functions that we probably won't turn on day one. And some of them probably can't be used given the public forum nature of some of our meetings. But I think our goal with Pamela and Keith leading is to get the core system implemented, and then as you get trained and understand how it works, say, well, oh, we'd like to use this other feature, or this might make sense for us, or can we hide that? Go through that process as well.
Okay, thank you.
And the BPL fund is currently using this onboard this feature, and it seems to be working well. So I think the adoption time, Ben, you know, is it's really easy to use. You're going to find that it's going to make our life easier, and it's certainly going to make Pamela's life easier in terms of having all this information in one place. Any other new business?
I have another question, sorry. Do you guys have like a quick demo recording that you could share?
Yeah, there are webinars on their main site that we can find the right one to send to you so you can get an orientation.
All right, cool, thank you.
Okay, Pamela, any public comments?
There are none.
Okay. So I'd like to call for a vote. I'm proposing that we enter executive session for the purpose of to conduct a strategy session for negotiations with a non-union staff member under exemption 2 of the Mass Open Meeting Law. The meeting will take place after this meeting adjourns, and we will not be reconvening in a public session. May I have a motion to enter executive session?
So
So moved.
moved.
May I have a second?
Second,
Any
I
discussion?
need to do a roll call vote for this, Priscilla, just so you know.
Yes. Any discussion? Okay, and roll call vote, please.
Okay. Arana Ortiz,
Yes.
Bradley,
Yes.
Cronin,
Yes.
Douglas,
Yes.
Josina Fori.
yes.
Hyla will be joining us in executive session. He got bumped off a second ago, so we have a quorum. We have a approval.
Okay, so voted that the trustees move into executive session. Thank you. Now, just for the logistics, please, you have a second Zoom meeting link. So Pamela, could you
Yes.
describe the process? I know you've
Yes.
sent it to people, but before we leave, just so we don't lose anybody.
Yep, this concludes this public session. This Zoom will end. There was a second link that was sent to you labeled executive session. I do ask that each of the trustees will join via that link.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Thank you.
thank you.
Great meeting.